Ruvain, where are you this morning? In a moment, we'll start Samach Aleph, Amud Aleph with the Mishnah.
Oh, we had another baby. No, wait, not in addition
What?
to the one in the bulletin. We had another one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of a nidcha based on the situation,
Yeah.
but it made it in there anyway.
Today's stuff is we're going to start.
But we're not going.
Actually, we're going to start on Samach Amud Beis with the Mishnah on the bottom of the.
I didn't get involved.
I hear.
Okay, I'm going to learning sponsorships. Friends of Melascott, Year of Learning, Friends of Melaskotsky, Moshe Zelig ben Mordechai. Martin Lipman and family in memory of his wife, Malka Chana Bas Pinchas. Friends of Herb Jeremiah, Tzvi ben Zev. Friends of Sam Coleman, Shmuel ben Yaakov. Friends of Gideon Lazinski, Mordechai Shlomo ben Meir. Bella and David Adler in memory of her father, Eliyahu ben Yosef HaKohen. Those who were inspired by our Rebbetzin Emerita, Sheila Shapiro, Sarah Esther Malka, but Meshulam Yisachar. Gail and Leslie Kaplan in memory of their parents, Mushka Sprinza Bad Yosef Chaim Bechava, Hanan ben Moshe Eliezer Bechana, Pesha Bad Shmuel Yitzchak Halevi B'Tzipora, Isra ben Yoel Moshe HaKohen Bechana. Rexford Friends of Gladys Sherman, Gutta Bad Meir. Michael Klein and Friends of Judah Klein, Yehuda Tzvi ben Chaim. Marsha Bronner in memory of her husband, Arav Yerachmiel ben Shmuel. A Month of Learning by Ruvain and Susan Podolsky in memory of his father, Tzvi ben Pinchas. A Week of Learning by Ari and Judy Cohen in memory of his mother, Fega bat Yechiel, and her mother, Hinda bat Moshe Zechariah Halevi. Also by Michael and Sharon Glass in memory of his father, Yitzchak Tzvi ben Yechael Michel. Okay, we have a Day of Learning by Carol and Josh Sanborn in memory of Ralph Heifetz's brother, Rabbi Joshua Heifetz. Okay, today is the Friday the 13th, gentlemen. Okay, there is no individual days of learning today. Okay. What? 13 is Bar Mitzvah. Yeah. Okay.
My son-in-law had a big 3 grapes.
They made an announcement.
Which I wouldn't let the Arabs in.
Okay. Okay, Mishnah, Samach Aleph, Amud Beis, bottom of the Amud. Okay, the new Mishnah, right? That's where we are. Okay, right. No Ruvain yet. Okay. Amanat sheyesh lo beit kur afar. All right, if he has the question of the individual owning. Okay, we talked about did he have to show the money, show the land, things like that in the previous Mishnah. Now we're talking about the fact that he owns property. Okay, and what happens as he say, "Oh, I own, 40 acres in downtown Boca." Okay, what happens? All right.
You're very well.
Almanat sheyesh lo beit kur afar. All right. We could talk about a whole amount of what is a beit kur and how much, and I won't go into that in detail. right?
Between 4 and
Okay.
7.5 acres.
Right. So basically 30 seah. So the issue of this amount of money, okay, is
Wait.
not how large the property is. The question is going to be, what is the quality of this property? Okay, is this property going to be capable of being planted, okay, and produce a crop? Or is it not being capable of being planted, seeded, and produce a crop?
Like
Okay.
the Everglades or something,
What?
like the Everglades.
Something like, okay. Well, we're not going to get exactly to the example of the Everglades, but we will get to an example of a discussion of geography. Okay, a discussion of geography in the Mishnah and Gemara. Okay.
The point is that it has to be what he claims it to be. If he simply says he owns a core
It's
somewhere, then it could be in the Everglades. It's
right.
If he says he has
That's
a
why I
core,
just said. That's why I said it has to be plantable. Okay, and even if it's plantable, we're talking about the value of the property is based on the land, or is it based on the produce that's going to come from the land? We're going to see that's going to be the underlying motif in this Mishnah and Gemara. Okay.
What he's basically saying is, I have enough
Okay.
land to grow the wheat.
Well, we don't know that. Let's wait and see. Okay. Hare zo mekudeshet v'yeshlo. She is betrothed on the assumption that he does have this land and it is plantable, croppable. Okay. If he says, Almanat sheyeshli b'makom ploni, I have land in such and such a location, right? Im yeshlo ba'oto makom, if it's true that he has land in that specific location, and again, I emphasize it's able to be seeded and produce products of quality. Okay, if that's the case, mikudeshet, then she is betrothed. Ve'im lav, and if not, eina mikudeshet. She is not considered to be betrothed.
Even if he has better land.
Okay, doesn't matter. Almanat she'arech beit kur afar, on the condition that I will show you this amount of land. Hare zo mikudeshet. She is betrothed. Vayirena, and he must show it to her. V'im heraba bik'ah, but if he shows it to her that it's someplace in a plain, okay, eina mikudeshet. Okay. In other words, if it's not in an appropriate location, that would guarantee to be able to plant
He
it,
doesn't own it.
seed it. Well,
Right.
that's
He doesn't own it.
that we'll get to in a second.
But that's what it means.
No, that's what Rashi says what it means. Okay, all right. Tosafot don't always agree. You know that, right? Okay. All right. So what happens? Vim her ababik okay. Eina mikudesh. Right. So now our Gemara. V'nichush shema yeshlo. Perhaps we should suspect that whatever he says, he has the land. Va'od, and furthermore, Tanya, and we also say, Chayshinan shema yeshlo. We have a brayta that says we should give person benefit of the doubt, that if he claims that he has such land, assume that he has it. Lo kasha, we're not here to have a problem. Ha b'kiddushe vadai, here when it's going to be a valid betrothal. Ha b'kiddushe safek. Here, on the other hand, if there's a situation where it's a questionable kiddushe. Lameli lemitna gabe ara. So the question is, why then do we have a situation that he requires that we deal with in our Mishnah, an example of land? V'lameli lemitna gabe zuze. And why did we have previously that we also have a Mishnah that deals with the whole question of money? Why do we need two different Mishnayot in this on basically the same motif, the same question issue? Tzricha, we need it, both Mishnayot. The Iyashma'in and Gabe Zuze, if we had only learned, right, in regards to the monetary, actual cash, so to speak, Mishum de Avidi Inshe Dimatzneya. Why? Because maybe he's not going to be showing it because he has it hidden. He has it put away in an account in Switzerland. Who knows where? Okay. Aval ara, but land, ema, ida itle, ara, with the land. If he has the land, kala itle, then clearly it should be easy to see. In other words, where the land is, what it is. Kamash Malan comes to teach us that's not necessarily the case. Okay, that we still, even if seeing the land, that doesn't always guarantee that it's his. Right, as the Gemara is going to continue to go on. Amanat sheyeshli b'makom ploni, where our Mishnah said that he has land in certain place. Im yeshlo, if he does have. Pshita, isn't that obvious? Mahu detema. What do you want to teach us with this? Amar la, he says to her, right? Mai nafkalach mina. What difference does it make to you? Okay, to the young woman that he wants to betroth. Okay, where the land is located. Ana tarachna umaitina. Come, okay. I'm going to be the one who's going to put the time in and work the land and bring you the produce, etc. All right. Kamash Malan comes to teach us that's again not the case, and that therefore, again, we have to deal with the fact that is it land that he owns and that he can seed it properly and get produce from it. Next part.
Is it enough to say that he says he's going to do this? Do they believe him?
No.
No, they don't.
They don't.
Yes.
Right, that's the point. Amanat she'arech beit kur afa, on the condition that I will show you this property. Okay. Ta'ana. Okay. So what do we have here? All right. The issue is taught elsewhere. Lo nitkavna zo ela lirot mishalo. All right. So our condition has got to be that clearly, okay, he has to be able to show her that land.
That she has the assumption that he owns it.
Okay, we're going to get to it in a second.
That's what
right?
those words.
Yes, right, right. What is it? Zo, right? Lo nitkavna zo ela lirot mishalo. That the land is his. Okay, what does it mean? His. A again. That not only does he own it, that he can seed it and it'll give produce. Okay, that's the point. All right. Now, but our Mishnah said then that if he shows it someplace in a plain, okay, or someone to translate bika as a valley, okay, that she is not betrothed. Shita, that's obvious why. Lo tzricha denakit bedis Torah. No, we're not. We're only talking about the fact that it's possible that he's doesn't have real ownership of the land, but that it's involved in sharecropping. Okay, he gets a portion of the produce of the land from that, but it's not. He isn't the one that actually owns the land. All right, that's the point. Gabe hekdesh. So now we raise the following in terms of making this land hekdesh. Right? What is it? Tznan. We learn as follows in today's daf. Right? Samech Aleph. Hamakdish sadehu b'sha'at hayovel. One who sanctifies this land during the Shemitah year. What happens? Yovel. Notain. All right. Bazera chomer seorim. Okay. What does he do? He can redeem the land at a special fixed redemption price. Okay. What is that? Right? It is 50 silver shekels for the area that would produce a chomer of barley seed. Okay, that's our point. Chamishim shekel kesef. Okay, that's the point. So there is a special fixed redemption price. Okay, the shiur I listened to said he basically puts out a shekel and a piraon for each year, and therefore ultimately it covers. Hayu nikaim amukim asarat fachim. If there were depressions or clefts in the land that were deeper, that as deep as 10 tfachim, O slaim gvoim asarat tfachim, or the land had rocks that were taller than 10 tfachim, right? Ein nimdadin ima. Those areas are not measured and therefore with the other land, and therefore one cannot redeem it with the fixed redemption price. Instead, one has to only redeem it based on the fair market value. Okay? Pachot mikan, less than that, nimdadin ima. Okay, if those rocks or those clefts, depressions, ditches, whatever you, however you translate, okay, are less, then it can be measured with the other land and be redeemed by the special fixed redemption price. Vahavinenba, and we talked about this, we learned about this, we discussed it. Nehi de bahade ara lo kidshu, that with these kinds of lands, that he cannot betroth her. Nikdeshu ba'apei nafshayu. Okay, and what are we saying there? Okay, that okay, maybe we should say, let us sanctify these lands separately on their own. Okay, v'chitema, and if you want to say, comma, delo have beit kor, that these areas are not equivalent to a beit kor, lo chashiv. Maybe we shouldn't consider them. We shouldn't include them. Or minhu. But we challenge this with the following. Our pasuk says, sadeh. Okay, that right? That basically a man shall sanctify the part of a field of his possession. Ma Talmud Lomar. What does it come to teach us? Lafi Shene Amar Zera Chomer Seorin B'Chamishim. Okay, giving that specific fixed redemption price.
It's all based on the fact that the land is going to be used to grow crops.
Absolutely.
You could bring somebody to something to look at this, I own the Grand Canyon. And you can't, and you say, no, that's no good.
It was an agrarian society. The
Right.
only value.
Right. Okay, the land's value was based on being able to have produce. Okay. Ainli ella shehgdish be'inyan hazeh. Okay, I might say that it's only in regards to this example of hekdesh. Minayin lerabot l'tach. How do I know? In other words, I might have only thought that since our Mishnah specifically said at the outset, Beit Kor, okay, that maybe that's the only valid measurement that the fixed redemption price could apply to. So it's telling us the following. No. Okay, how do I know that I might include in the possibility of fixed redemption, special fixed redemption price, other amounts of land? Okay, other measures, letach, right, like a half a core, v'chatzi letach, and half of that, se'ah, that amount, tirkav, even less than that, v'chatzi tirkav, and even half a tirkav, which would be about almost getting to 1/60th of a core, v'afilu rova, even that amount, minayin. How do I know? We know that any of these other measurements work, right? Talmud Lomar, Sadeh Mikom Makom. Here it says, the pasuk said, land, field, okay, of any variety, any size.
Rabbi, but suppose it's a piece of land in a valuable area, like in the middle of New York, where it has a value,
$1 million a square foot.
but it doesn't produce anything.
This was an agrarian
Okay,
society.
you've got to realize that what we're talking about here is he's got to be able to, for him to clearly say he has benefit from that land in order to use that as Kedushin money.
He rents it out, yeah.
Okay,
So
all right.
however he
The
gets it,
point
it's okay.
is, no, the point is their society, land was the essential element of
Right, I
wealth.
understand.
I mean,
and therefore-
in theory,
like
if he
our real
said, if
It's
he
real
said,
estate.
I own 5 houses in Jerusalem, that would be okay too. but most people were farmers. So what we're talking about is a guy is courting a woman and he says, I have enough land to support a family.
All right, yeah.
And that for 99.9% of the people, that meant he had a court or
right.
more.
Okay. Amar Ukva Barcham. He says as follows. Hacha benekaim leimayim askina. He says, why did our text talk about pits, holes, ditches, clefts, right? Why? Because they were full of water, which would clearly imply it's not able to be planted. That's why I keep emphasizing that that's the theme connected with this land. It's not just owning land, it's having land that's able to be right. Mishum delav b'nei zriyaninu. And there are, Gemara spells it out clearly. Why? Because those ditches or clefts are not able to be seeded. They can't grow anything in it. Daikanami. And we can deduce this from the language. Why? Dikatani, dumya desalaim gvoim. Why? Because our Mishnah said they were similar to these higher rocks, boulders, shmamina. And that's what we learn from this. So you have them now. The Gemara picks up on this thing. Ihachi, if that's the case. Afilu pachot mikan. It doesn't have to be just 10 tfachim. What happens if it's less and there's water in it? You still can't seed it. Still can't plant it. Nami, there also. Hinhu, he says, na'agne da'ara mikro. These are called pools or basins of the land. Okay, we're talking about the natural contours of the land here. Okay, shidra da'ara mikro, and those areas where the stones stick up. Okay, that's the case that we call those like the spines. Okay, of the land. Okay, so that's the case. Gabe mechertna. Now, regarding the sale of the land, we were just talking up to this point about hekdesh. Okay, now we're dealing with the buying property,
sailing in little water.
Buying property, the real estate. Ha'omer lechavero, beit kur afar ani mochela. I'm selling you a piece of property the size of a beit kur. Okay, what happens? V'hayusham nikaim amukim asarat fachim, and that particular piece of property does possess clefts that are deeper than 10 tfachim, oslaim gvoim asarat fachim, or rocks, boulders that are taller than 10 tfachim. Ein nibdadin ima. They are not to be measured, included in the price of the land. They're separate. Okay? Pachot mikan nimdadin ima. Less than that height or depth, they are to be included in the regular price of the land. Va'amar Mar Ukva Bar Chama. And again, Mar Ukva Bar Chama is commenting, Afal pi she'ein mele'im mayim. Even though these clefts, these depressions, don't include water. My Tama, what's the reasoning? Amar Rav Papa, says Rav Papa, Lafi she'ein adam rotzeh, sheyitain et me'otav b'sadeh achat, v'yire'eh lo kishnayim u'kishlosha mikomot. Right? Because he's he wants to put out his money for a single piece of land that he can work all together, as opposed to depressions in the land, which sort of divided up into 2 or 3 fields, and therefore he has to work with this one and then somehow get across to the second one, and so on.
So the standard of 10 tvachim is because that's a wall.
Right. That
so
would
if you had a ridge of 10 tvachim, it would literally divide the
field as if there were separate.
The same thing with the ditch.
Right? As if it was separate pieces of property.
It's all agricultural based on-
That's right. Yeah.
Not based on mining.
No, no. Okay. So what happens? Hacha, here in regards to the land value for Kiddushin, which we come back to, how does all of this apply to Kiddushin? All right. Lahakdish midaminama. Do we say that that using land as a means of trying to do the Kiddushin should be compared to our example on the top of the Amud, where we talked about Hekdesh, where there's a special fixed redemption price or fair market price? Okay, is that what it's to be compared to? Okay, Lakdish midaminanla, da'amarla. Why? Because he said to her, Ana tarachna v'zar'ana umaitina. Because he said, I will work the land and I will seed it and I will bring the produce to you.
Even if it's not ideal.
Okay, in
land.
other words, even if it's not the best land and it's not local, I'll do the schlepping and all the work, and therefore I'll still be able to provide for you. And therefore, that might indicate, yes, it's his land, he'll do the work, and therefore he has substantial enough to use that for Kiddushin. Okay. All right, our new Mishnah. Okay, this Mishnah is going to be familiar to, I hope, many of us, because it's going to present the concept of T'nai Kaful. Okay, a double stipulation based on Rabbi Meir's view that it must include both a positive and a negative element. In other words, you talk about compliance with the Tanai first and failure to comply afterwards. Right? Elsewhere, the Gemara gives a number of other some of them. Yeah. Okay, and some of the other conditions by which this T'nai Kaful works. One would be that you have to say the condition before the action. Okay, and some of the others we'll pick up on eventually as we go through. Okay, all right, our Mishnah. All right, right, and it's going to give some other biblical examples to try to prove that Rabbi Meir is correct in his concept of T'nai Kaful. All right, we'll start the Mishnah. Rabbi Meir Omer, he says as follows: Kol T'nai she'ena kit'nai b'nei Gad u'b'nei Ruvain. Any conditional such a statement that is not similar to the condition that was biblically established for the tribes of Gad and Reuven, ain't no Tanai. Says Rabbi Meir, it is not considered a valid condition. Shneamar, as it says, Vayomer Alehem, he said to them, Im Ya'avru b'nei Gad u'b'nei Reuven, if the sons of Gad and sons of Reuven pass over, in other words, they cross over the Jordan to fight with the people, particularly, by the way, at the lead, okay, into Canaan, right? Uktiv, and then it's also written, V'im lo ya'avru chalutzim, and if they don't go over armed, okay, with weapons, okay, and that's the negative, right? So that's his example to show that that's the T'nai of B'nai Gad, B'nai Reuven, and that is, like you said, the archetype, the model, Rabbi Meir argues, for any valid T'nai. Okay? Now, what happens? Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel Omer, he says, Tzrich hadavar la'omro. One has to spell out this situation, to say it. She'il malei came. In other words, maybe in that case of B'nai Gad and B'nai Reuven, it needed, maybe it's not the archetype, the model, right? Because I might argue, okay, that I could understand this condition in another way. What might that be? She'il malei came, maybe yesh b'mashma. Maybe it's possible that I could have interpreted it differently, namely, she'afilu be'eretz Canaan lo yinchalu. Okay, that if you don't cross over, you're not going to get any inheritance whatsoever. Maybe that's the point of the
They
condition.
had to make the second half to
And
say
so-
they will.
Right. And so therefore bringing the non-compliance side of the Tanai is going to tell us that yes, okay, we're not saying all or nothing, okay? We're rephrasing it in a different manner. Okay, so now our Gemara picks up to discuss this in detail, right? Shapir Ka'amar le Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel Rabbi Meir. That was well said, Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel's challenge, I'll say to Rabbi Meir. Amalach Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir could come back and answer. Isalka da'atach lav litznai kafuhu da'at. If you might think that we're not talking about a double stipulation here, okay? Lichtov, then the text simply could have said, V'im lo ya'avru, that if you don't pass over the land, v'nechazu b'tochachem, okay? That you'll simply be given a portion
With
amongst
everybody
the
else.
others with everyone else. Be'eretz Canaan, okay? In the
That's
land of
word.
Canaan, right? Lama li, why then did our text in the Torah have to specifically spell out in the land of Eretz of Canaan? Shma mina litznai kafur hu da'ata. It comes to tell us that this is to tell us it's a double stipulation. Okay? V'Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel Amar, he says, Ilo katav Rachmana be'eretz Canaan. Maybe that were it not written there in Eretz Canaan, Hava Amina, I might say as follows: V'nochazu b'tochachem be'eretz Gilad. Okay, that you would receive your portion with them in Eretz Gilad. Okay, on the not
The east.
okay, and the other side of the Jordan. Oh yeah, it's the east. Okay, Aval Eretz Canaan. Okay, but Eretz Canaan itself, klal lo, that you wouldn't get any. So it's not a question here of trying to
Not a
challenge
revolt.
Rabbi Meir and saying it's you cross over, okay, else you get nothing. No, maybe it's only a sentence. If you don't cross over, you'll get only this portion with them and not.
The words Eretz Canaan are not a reboy because that means you will get on the west.
Well, you'll get something, okay, but not there. Okay, that's the point. Okay, with them in what we consider Eretz. All right, so what happens? Rabbi Meir, but Rabbi Meir challenges him, but tochachem. It says you'll get it with them. Okay, that they would share it with them. Kol hecha de'it lecho, wherever you would have. Mashma, whether they would get, you would also get there. Tanya, and we have a brighter. Amar Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel. Again he comes. Mashal mahadavar domer. What might I compare this to? A mashal, a parable. La'adam shahayam mechalek nechasav levanav. To a man that was dividing up his property to his sons. Amar ploni bani yirash sadeh ploni. Son Joe will receive this particular land. Ploni b'nai yirash sadeh ploni, and son Sam will receive this particular land. Right?
It's not a Sam.
Okay.
Son is Sam.
Okay. Uploni b'ni yitan matayim zuz b'yirash sadeh ploni. But Jack, this son, must give 200 zuz, and then he will inherit.
An even bigger.
Okay, he get this field. Okay, so what happens? So of course the question is going to be, why do these other two sons get it, Mela, and this one has to pay money for it?
Because it's bigger.
Well, we don't know that. I don't know that yet. Okay, right. In other words,
Let's split up the first two.
right. So that's the question. So the implication now, Rabbi Hanina is continuing.
But now he's giving the other
Okay,
side of.
so now so that's what he said. So how am I comparing this as a mashal? V'im lo yitain, and if he doesn't give the money, right? Yirash im echav b'shar nechasim, then he will receive the same size of property as his other brothers. That's the point.
So that's the Tanakh.
So that becomes the right, and that's how we see. So that's how he's trying to make it comparable to understanding the T'nai for B'nai Gad, okay, and B'nai Ruvain, and not necessarily as a T'nai Kaful, except for the fact that he has made it parallel enough to show that there is not only a positive, but also a non-compliant second part of the T'nai as well.
What does that show? That if he,
So
if he does it, he gets a larger portion?
Then that would say he would get a larger
No,
portion.
no, if he does not, he would not get.
He
the
would not,
large.
yes, but if he does give the money, he
And
would get a
because
larger
that
portion.
equalizes.
Okay, that's the point. Okay, so therefore it shows the double element. And therefore that's why he's arguing this is a mashal to parallel the example of T'nai Kaful that you've suggested with B'nai Ruvain and B'nai Gad. I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That you,
Okay.
he's trying to show that you don't need the kafel. This is Rab Chanina ben
Right,
Yamin.
but he's saying, but
He's saying also-
but he brings in the pack the part ve'im lo yitain.
But for
which-
from his perspective,
but that's the
that's understood. It need not be
Right, but that's the non-compliant issue. So that's why we're going to see that Rabbi Meir is going to be arguing against.
correct. He's going to
against
say
it.
no. It is actually
Exactly.
stated.
That's we'll get to it. That's what I said. Because he brings that in. Right? Right. So what happens? Mi garam lo liyirashi mechav b'shar nechasim. Do we really say then that even if he doesn't pay, he's going to get an equivalent portion to the other brothers? So the Gemara tells us, philo garam lo. So here, that is the double stipulation that Rabbi Meir has been arguing in favor of. And that shows you, Rabbi Hanina, that Hanina ben Gamliel, that this double stipulation, T'nai Kafu, is what is required. That's the point. Vaha lo damya mashal matnitin. And that's what the Gemara tells us, and that's would be part of Rabbi Meir's argument, that the mashal does not parallel our Mishnah. Hatam katani yesh b'mashma. There we're teaching it, even, and that's what we've learned from it. Sha'afilu be'eretz Canaan lo yinchalu. That even with the land of Israel, he argued they wouldn't get any portion. Rabbi Hanina originally argued. Alma, Fila, but the fact that he did it doubled, Le'eretz Gilad Nami Mahani, that even there, okay, he might get it, I might argue, maybe he gets a double portion, part in Eretz Yisrael and part in Gilad. Okay? Vahacha, and here, Katani, Mi Garam Lo Liyarash Im Echav B'shar Nechasim. Do we really say then that he receives a portion among his other brothers? Philo garamlo. It is the double aspect that causes that. Alma phila l'shar nechasim hu dekamahani, and therefore maybe he would get a double amount. Okay, than the other brothers. Therefore, I would argue that mashal does not work again from that perspective. Lo kasha, not a problem here. Ha, Mekame Danima Le, Rabbi Meir. Here, on the one hand, this is what he argued before Rabbi Meir responded to him. Okay? V'ne'achazu, and they would see their portion with the brothers. Ha, Lebatar Danima Le Rabbi Meir v'ne'achazu. And here was what happened after Rabbi Meir responded to him, and then that he would only get a portion with the other brothers, not a double portion and not an issue of receiving nothing. Okay? Now, we're going to get to some further proofs in regards to the idea of the double stipulation. Okay? Bishlema the Rabbi Meir. That's appropriate given the mindset that Rabbi Meir presented to us, right? At the beginning of our Mishnah. Hainu dichtihim, because we have another example that says as follows in the pasuk: Im tetiv se'et, ve'im lo tetiv lefetech chatat rovetz. This is in Bereshis Parak Daled, where we're talking about regarding the Cain and Abel story. All right? And notice there is a positive and then there is a negative. Ela Rabbi Chanina lamal. So what is Rabbi Chanina going to say if he argues against the double t'nai kafur? Salka da'atach, Amina. It's possible I might have said, im tetiv, okay? Agra, if you do well, you get a reward. Im lo tetiv, if you don't do well, lo agra, velo dina. There would be not only no reward, but no punishment, no penalty. Okay? In other words, the all or nothing. Kamash Malan comes to teach us that again, says Rabbi Meir, that's not the fact of this pasuk. It gives us both the double stipulation.
Which means it's not a riot to Reb Meir.
It's why isn't it?
Because you would, if you only had one half, he would get a reward or it would remain neutral. By the double lashon, he has a punishment built in, so it's new information and it's not
one might argue that.
In other words, this is kind of Hananya ben Gamliel's rebuttal to Reb Meir, that there is a need.
Right. That's how Art Scroll explains it.
That I don't know what Art Scroll. That's
okay.
Isn't the lack of reward a punishment?
No.
No.
You go home, you eat breakfast.
You go home.
In
other words, it could the fact that there's a fact that there's the penalty there. Michael wants to say that adds to it. I'm not sure. I'm not convinced.
You're right.
All right, Kamash Mala. Bishlema the Rabbi Meir. Again, I'll give another example. Says the Gemara. Bishlema the Rabbi Meir. Hainu dichtiv. Where also it's written again in another source. Az tinakeh me'elati. Okay. When Abraham spoke to his servant and says, go get the girl. Okay? What happens? Otherwise, you'll be clear of the vow. Ela Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel, lamali. So how does Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel explain it? It's tarich, it was necessary. Salka da'ata chamina, it's possible I might say as follows, right? Namely, heicha denechale ledida, where it's something that she is comfortable with. In other words, she's willing to go, right? Velo nechale ledidho, but it's not comfortable for her family to let her go. Maite ba'al karchayu, bring her even against their will. Mashmalan comes to teach us that's not the case. Im lo ta'avet isha. Okay, again, furthermore. And what about if it's not for the good of the woman? Lamali, what's the situation? It's tarich. Again, I would say the following, it was necessary. Salkadata chamina, it's possible I might say, heicha denecha laho, ladid ho, where it's comfortable, in other words, it's acceptable for them, for her to go. Velo necha la ladida, but it's not acceptable for her to go. Naita ba'al karcha, bring her against her will.
Because she's not yet 12 and a half. So
I don't know that. Okay, come. All right. Kamash Malan comes to teach us again. That's the case. Right? Bishlema the Rabbi Meir. Hainu dichtevin, we're going to come up with another example where it's written, Im bechukotai telechu. Okay, in Vayikra, if you follow the rules, V'im bechukotai tim asu. And then you have the negative, the non-compliance. Ela Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel. Lamali, why is that necessary? It's tarich, he argues, it's necessary. Salkadata chamina, it's possible I might say, im bechukotai telechu bracha, you would get some sort of a blessing. Im bechukotai tim asu, but if you detest my laws, lo bracha velo kvala, you'll get neither a blessing nor a curse. Okay? In other words, his argument is that adds to another element, and therefore that doesn't necessarily argue that that's really a true snai kafu. Kamash malan, says the Gemara, no, comes to teach us that's not the case. Bishlem el Rabbi Meir, another case. So to Rabbi Meir, Hainu dichtiv, where it's written, im ta'avu ushmatem, right? Where he says there, okay, that if you're willing and be obedient, listen to it. Ve'im tim'anu umritem v'gomer. But then elsewhere it says, if you rebel, okay, and refuse and rebel, Ela the Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel Lamali. What about him? Eats tarich. It was necessary. Salka da'at chachamina, again, I might say, im ta'avo tova, ve'im tim'anu lo tova velo ra'ah. Okay, all right, be neutral. Kamash malan comes to teach us that isn't the case. And I think we'll stop there, all right, because we got to deal with some more stuff tomorrow. All right, right. So we'll pick up tomorrow.
Someday we'll find out. Maybe tomorrow.
Okay.
That's tomorrow. The nap is 4:30.
The daf tomorrow.